Let's replace the cell switch on an Atwood 7920-2. I start here at the thermostat. First, I switch it to off. There's a very unsatisfying click. Then I go to the bottom and I make sure the temperature is set to the lowest setting. Then I go to the unit and lift the cover off. Mine just lifts up and out. It's kind of awkward, but it just comes out. Then inside the unit, I look for the switch that says reset and off, turn it to off. Then I look for my fuses and I'll remove the fuse cover. This will look different in every RV. Hopefully there's a label that helps you know which one is the furnace. And for me, it's the 4th slot. So I'll count, even if it's an empty slot, 1, 2, 3, 4, and pull that. Just using some pliers and pull straight out. And there's that fuse. Then I go outside to the gas and shut it off. My unit is ducted, and I found to be able to get those ductwork components detached, it's nice to open up this front panel just to be able to see inside. So first I loosen the screw down on the bottom right, and then I can completely remove these 3 screws. 1, 2, 3. I use a little 1/4 inch wrench to get to these screws because it's a tight fit. Once they're loose, I can use my fingers just to unscrew them the rest of the way and pull them out of here. There's 2 and 3. With those screws out, I just pull this little panel out. It lets me look inside. And there is my ductwork. So you'll have to access that ductwork to turn it. And for me, one of my cabinets on the side lets me see that ductwork. So I'll put my hand in there and try to grab it up near the unit, and then I twist it. And this is not super easy to do, but you can see it start to rotate. So here's one of those ductwork pieces pulled out. It's not terribly easy, but you got this. Make sure you grab it here by the collar. You don't want to detach this ductwork from this collar. Just grab it tightly and rotate. And you can see easier now this tab right here needs to rotate its way out. And let's see if we can get the camera in there so you can see this bit. You can see where that tab goes in. Now for my setup, I can only access this one side. The other side I can't get to from this cabinet. So what I have to do is loosen 2 screws, 1, 2 down here, to make sure I can pull this unit out a little bit and get some more access. So in my case, I just use a screwdriver to loosen this screw and this screw. You can tell that the screw is holding this in because they go through the sheet metal and into my cabinetry. Once I've got them loose, I'll finish it off with my fingers, 1 and 2. And now it's a bit loose. I can kind of wiggle it around. And let's see if I can pull it out a little bit. So I was not able to free my unit enough to get to that other ductwork. So I think my next step is to go ahead and disconnect the gas line. And that's why it's so important to have the gas and everything turned off. We're going to disconnect this gas line. Luckily, it has 2 different sizes here. So I can use 2 different wrenches, a 3/4 and an 11/16. And I'll put them on each portion of the gas here, and I can loosen that up. It'll look something like this, where they keep the bottom one from moving and the top one will rotate it. Once it's loose, you can just finish the job with your fingers, and this gas line would then be loose. The next step is go to the outside of the RV, locate the exhaust for the furnace, and remove the 2 screws holding it in place. So once you have those screws out, and you got some of this gumminess pulled away, you can kind of slide that out. And then you can see inside there, they basically just sleeves together, and it makes it a little bit easier to pull out. So a couple of notes. Mine was pretty snug, not the easiest to pull out. You want to make sure you don't cut your fingers on these edges, so you might want to wear gloves. Once I can have it exposed, I do that same drill where I grab it and I turn it to try to loosen it to get to that tab. It kind of helps to kind of work it up and down as well. There we go. There we go, and it's detached, and I can work it out of the way. Again, careful not to cut my fingers. There we go. Set that ductwork to the side, and now we should be able to pull the whole unit out. Couple of tips before we pull it all the way out. We've got to make sure we get that gas line clear. So we're going to move this unit over, maybe even back in a little bit more. And you have to kind of lift and work past that gas line. And then I put a towel on the floor because, again, everything's sharp. Gloves are recommended, and they can pull it out. Don't want to damage the cabinet, so keep lifting and pulling and get that out onto a towel or something to protect your floor. So here's that unit all the way out. Just pulled it forward. Mine luckily has enough wire that I don't need to disconnect anything. It just pulls out while staying connected. You can see in here where it sits on that block of wood, and that's that. All the way in the back of the unit, I've got this cover, and I want to detach it, and there are, I think, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 screws to detach. And again, I'll use my 1/4 inch wrench here to get those off, or you can use a flathead screwdriver. And you can see this component kind of slides into this black plastic tube. You have to kind of pull it away and slide it out of that black tube, and it's off. So that brings me to another panel here, and I've got a screw on the top and all the way right there on the very bottom I need to undo. So here it is, all detached. So this is the squirrel cage. I want to make sure it spins freely and is nice and clean. So this takes us to the part we're after, which is the sail switch. You can see right here on the outside, there's a little cover for the sail switch, and the sail switch is sitting, you can see, on the floor of the unit. So to take it apart, we'll get first right here at this screw and loosen that up. So once the screw is loosened up, we can pretty much pull the screw out, and this whole sail switch just slides out on a little tray. Take it all the way out past the sail, and that's what it looks like. Sail switch all connected there. So once it's slid out, we have 2 screws to detach to loosen this and 2 wires. And it's a good idea to take a picture at this point and maybe mark those wires so that you know which one goes on top and which one goes on the bottom. So you can see in my case, I just use a piece of blue tape to help me remember. So I'm going to replace this sail switch. It's actually not very old, but the problem with it is that it has a very stiff spring. You can see if I hold it and push that sail down, it pops right back up. So this Atwood unit actually needs a low flow sail switch. You can see if I push this down, it actually stays closed without much effort. It's definitely a weaker spring. Replacement is pretty easy. There are 2 screws and 2 connectors. So I'll just loosen these 2 screws. You can see while I'm loosening these screws, I'm going to hold the units right next to each other. Don't want to mix anything up. I want to install it the way the old one was installed exactly. Loosen those 2 screws, take them all the way out, set them to the side for a moment, and that sail switch is now off. I'm going to just pull out these connectors. It just takes a bit of force, but I'm going to kind of keep it together. Be careful, you've got sheet metal here, don't want to cut yourself. There's the top one. I've got it marked in blue. And then the bottom one just takes some force and wiggling, and there it is. So that's removed. Grab the new one, and I'm still holding those connectors in the same position, so I can just slide them right in. 1, 2, and then tighten them up all the way till they seat. That one actually clicked, and that one clicked too a little bit, so that's good. And that is now connected. Now I'll just grab my screws and place them right through these holes and tighten this guy down. So 1 screw on the back side there, hand start it, and then grab this other screw in the front here, start that right through, and use a screwdriver to finish that up. It's a plastic part. I don't need to get crazy on this. It's just nice and snug. So there's our finished product. We've got the 2 screws. Just make sure they're tight. That one feels pretty good, and this one. And that's that. The next step is to take our sail switch and just slide it back through this rectangular opening in the bottom of the blower area to kind of just walk everything together and just kind of push it on in. There we go. It's good to take a moment to look on the inside, make sure you got the right sail switch. And you know what, this is actually a little bit too long, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to cut the end of this off. So it looks like it needs about like 1 centimeter taken off. So I'm going to kind of, my little cutter tools aren't quite going through, but I was able to make a pretty good dent. I'm going to use a pair of pliers and just kind of break that off, kind of bend it back and forth here. This metal is surprisingly tough. So there it is, a little section removed. Try that fitment again. So we'll slide this unit right back in all the way, and now we can see it doesn't hit that far side. We're good to go. And it gets fastened back in place with this 1 screw right here. Now we'll put our blower assembly back on, and we can see that there is this little lip at the bottom that goes underneath the furnace, and this little lip on the top that goes up over the top, and that's what we use to guide this back into place. We also want to make sure that we don't have the wrong wires on the inside, so we'll go up and over, slide our swirl cage right back in. As we slide this blower unit back into the furnace, we want to take care of a couple of things. Number one, we want to follow our wires up to the motor, make sure no issues there. And then we have our 2 wires going to the sail switch. We want to make sure those don't get crimped or damaged in any way as we slide this back together. So it slides back together, and up at the top, there's that screw hole. And then if we rotate the unit, and then we have another screw hole right there on the bottom as well. Here's that blower assembly. We can see that top screw attached there and the bottom screw right there at the bottom. And pro tip is to make sure this black tube is connected right here where it's indented, but also connected up here. It can fall out up here at the top. So make sure that's connected. Otherwise your screw holes won't quite line up. And I would start with that screw right there at the bottom and then do the one at the top last. Now we need to add this cover back onto our fan blower assembly here. It feeds also into this black tube, and then we need to line up the screw holes. So we kind of push it into the tube at the same time we try to rotate it, something like that, and get those screw holes to line up. Now we've got our cover put back on, and we'll notice it has its 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, and 4 of those hex head screws. So now we're ready to guide our furnace back into its location. You can use a towel or something to protect our cabinetry and carefully slide it back on in, and keep an eye out for these wires. We don't pinch them or cause any issues while we're sliding this guy back into place. Once we get it in about this far, we'll have to work with our gas line. We'll have to lift it up and over this little bar here so it's on the correct side of the furnace. And on this side, I have to carefully tuck these wires that bring our power in, tuck them all the way back in behind the cabinetry. Now before I slide everything all the way in, I need to remember to attach my ductwork again. You can see it back here. There it is. I reach my hand in. There's a hole it goes into. And I can look at the back of this ductwork and look for the tabs. Line them up and reattach. There we go. So the tabs slide in behind the sheet metal. And I can then twist it to tighten it up. And go a little counterclockwise on mine, and you can kind of periodically peer inside and check and see that those tabs actually came into the inside of the furnace. So when sliding the furnace back in, it's helpful to go outside of the camper and check and see if you've got alignment. Like I don't right now, there's a gap on the right. I'll have to slide it to the left a bit on the inside. Next up, I'll attach my other piece of ductwork. Look for this tab, and this tab you can see is very slight. It goes in, rotates, and then it's locked into place. Now it's time to reattach my gas line, and I like to put a little bit of brass gas fitting thread sealant on my fingers and just kind of go around the threads there. It kind of lubricates them so you can get a little tighter and provide some extra sealant protection just right there on the threads. Then I'll tighten it down by hand, making sure I don't cross thread it. And then I'll use a 3/4 inch wrench at the top, 11/16 at the bottom. I don't want the bottom to move. I just want to tighten that top until it's nice and snug. It's seated on there. This is the gas line. We don't want any issues with that. And now there's just a couple of wood screws here and here to reattach and hold this furnace into place. Now we'll put this cover back on. So it lines up like this. 2 screw holes in the top and 1 in the bottom. And for now, we'll just place the 2 screws in the top, and we'll wait on the screw in the bottom because that one attaches to the control board, and we'll do that later. So here's that front metal cover replaced, and we can see here we've got the 2 screws. I had to use my 1/4 inch wrench to tighten those up because it's hard to get in there with a flathead screwdriver. So this is put together enough for me to run a quick test. I don't want to run it and get it hot, but a quick test is okay. So let's go ahead and pause for now, run the test, see if that new sail switch is working properly, and then we'll finish putting everything back together. Next up, I go back to my distribution panel, and I'm looking for my fuse fuses, and I want to put my fuse back in for my furnace. Outside, I want to make sure I'm connected to a good power source or have a completely full battery. Then I'll turn my gas valve back to open all the way and make sure that gas can flow. The regulator is pointing towards this tank, so I know I'm going to get good gas flow. Now I'm going to come up to my range, and because we've had the gas line opened up, there might be some bubbles in there of just pockets of air. We need to get the gas flowing again in our RV. So take a lot of care, take your time, make sure everything's aired out, and get one of these burners working first before we turn on the furnace. I like to use my lighter to make sure that I'm not going to have any issues. You can see there's a little bit of air. You know, just get some air out at first, and then hopefully we get gas to come in just a moment. There we go. So there is our gas. We know that gas is now successfully running through our camper. And of course, we turn the burner off before we move on. These furnaces have a reset and off switch. I want to set it to off so I can control it right here. Now up at the thermostat, I will pull this little tiny button so it's no longer on off, it's on. It's a tiny movement just to the left, and then I will set my thermostat all the way up to the max. Now I will hit this reset button. You can hear it kick on. You can see that light. It was off and then it turned green. That is awesome. It lets us know that the sail switch is working now. We should get a call for heat now. There we go. Hear the clicks, or a call for gas. And then I heard it turn on. So it's running now, and we are successful. We won't let this run very long because we still need to put the exhaust in the back and obviously put this together. This was just a test. So I'm gonna go ahead and cycle it back off. So now we're back outside of this exhaust port, and we need to put the cover back on, and we need to use something called butyl tape to do that. And so here we go. Here is that port that's gonna go back together, and then this is what the butyl tape looks like. It's just kind of a tape of that sticky gummy stuff. For the butyl tape, you'll cut it into sections like this and start at the bottom, kind of pushing it up in there, then the sides and the top last, because the idea is we want the water to flow away from this port. So here's that portal with some fresh butyl tape. So here's the back of the exhaust port with the new butyl tape. Once the butyl tape's on, I just sleeve this exhaust into what comes out of the furnace, and I'll slide that back together, and I'll mush it tight with that butyl tape there. And once I'm happy with that, I've got 2 screws, and you can see they're filled with butyl tape right now. I'll have to kind of push through the butyl tape and tighten the 2 screws down, one on either side. When we're done, it looks something like that with the butyl tape all the way around. Now we're back inside the RV, and we're gonna put this back together. The last steps, we wanna take this plastic cover and put it back into place. It slides right in front here, and there's a screw down on the bottom right. There's one more screw that goes through the cover, through the sheet metal of the furnace. Remember to hit that reset button because it will be covered up by the cover. The last step is our cover. And we'll notice that there is a little black plastic clip at the bottom. It goes right into our control board plastic cover, and the top just kind of lips up over that sheet metal. So just right up and in, right into there, and then right into the bottom. It's fairly unsatisfying. It doesn't click in like you'd like it to. I found that's how these furnaces kind of are, but they tend to stay in place. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out those descriptions and links down in the description below.